Hey everybody, it's Brian Kenny. Welcome back to MLB Now, Home Edition. Our special guest today is Jared Diamond of the Wall Street Journal. His new book is out now, Swing Kings, the inside story of baseball's home run revolution. Jared, congratulations on the book. It's excellent. It's good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thank you. We were supposed to have this conversation about the book in the studio like 2 months ago, but a lot has changed since then. So I'm glad we're able to do it today.
We're going to get into the book, but first, I know you're locked into what's happening now between Major League Baseball, trying to start the season, trying to put out a new protocol and staying safe, and the negotiations with the Players Association. Where are we on that? Give me a big picture take on the negotiations and how close or not close that they are.
I think we're going to see a lot more urgency between these two sides over the next couple of days. They've had one formal meeting, which was last week. They have not met formally since, and they have not officially put one on the schedule yet either. And that's really not going to work because if they want to play in early July, which is Major League Baseball's goal, they're going to need to have a deal pretty much wrapped up by the end of this month. They need some time to get players to spring training, preferably by the second week of June. They want 3 weeks at least of spring training time. Players would like 4 weeks. I don't foresee that happening, but 3 is sort of the bare minimum. So you could just look at the calendar for that all to happen. They have about 10 days, 12 days to get a deal done. There's a lot to hash out. They still have to finalize all these health and safety considerations. They have to, of course, the economic considerations. It might be even a bigger hurdle. So there's a lot to do. There's been a lot of rhetoric, a lot of arguments that we've seen sort of through the media, on TV. I think that's going to start quieting down, and we're going to see more real, let's get to the table, try to hash this out. Because ultimately, both sides do want to play baseball this year. They would love to be playing on July 4th. Everyone knows how good it would look to have baseball on our TVs on July 4th, given everything going on. So I think we're going to see some real sort of escalation of, hey, let's get to the table and figure this out really over the next couple of days.
I saw your piece, Jared, on the baseball guidebook, basically, and how thorough it is and how detailed it is in trying to keep the players safe in this new environment. And you also point out that because of that, baseball is going to look very different. How different is baseball going to look when it does come back?
Yeah, it's going to be nothing like the baseball that we are used to seeing from what it looks like. It's still going to be the game. They're still going to throw the ball, hit the ball, catch the ball. But all these little things sort of around the game, traditions that we've always taken for granted, are not going to be there this year under this plan. Things like exchanging lineup cards before home plate and bat boys and ball girls and throwing the ball around the horn after outs. None of these things individually matter. They're not crucial to the game being played. But part of why we love baseball, I think for everyone that's a longtime baseball fan, is the aesthetics of the game. It's what it looks like on the field. And that's obviously going to be different with no fans in attendance. But it's also these small things that we never really thought about that individually don't mean much, but put together, I think, do matter to baseball. And I think we're all willing to accept it for now to have something like baseball on the field. But I'm sure baseball realizes that these little things are important and that how the game looks, how the game feels, how it sounds, how it smells when people are there is part of that overall experience. It's not just about who wins and who loses and about who hits home runs and who has a good ERA. It's about how we feel watching the game. And that's going to be different this year, but I think it's okay considering everything that's sort of gone on in the country right now.
Yeah, no, you make a good point, Jared, because we miss it being part of the fabric, not just of summer, but more than summer. It's kind of the background of our lives, and that it's on and it's always there, and it can be there for when we want it. And whether you're watching very closely the way we do, or if you like it on in the background and you like knowing that baseball is there. Speaking of which, to your book now, it is fascinating. What I think is fascinating to this show is breaking the exclusivity of expertise, which you bring up with a lot of the coaches here. Craig Wallenbrock as well, right? I think specifically saying he comes through and it's like, wait, how can you teach hitting? You never hit in the major leagues. So explain this new dynamic that is prevalent through baseball now with coaches coming up with very new ideas and new technology.
I think what I learned working on this book that surprised me to an extent was for most of baseball history, the criteria for being a coach in professional baseball was actually shockingly simple. It was one, you played professional baseball yourself, and two, you were friends with the manager or somebody in the organization who sort of gave you the job. It wasn't much more sophisticated than that. There wasn't too much thought for most of baseball history about what are you really bringing to the table. So what ended up happening was guys would sort of teach what they were taught by their hitting coach, who probably taught what they were taught by their hitting coach. And it just was this cycle that went on for generations. And it worked. It worked for a long time. But what's happened is there's people out there that didn't play at the highest level that started saying, there's probably a better way. Guys that embraced video earlier than maybe professional baseball did, and now even more modern technology that exists today. And they started making observations about the swing or about other aspects of the game. They realized what's being taught isn't necessarily ideal. And these ideas were quieted. They were kind of shunned by pro baseball for a long time. But what's changed now, I think, goes back to Moneyball. Moneyball was so much about bringing outsiders into front offices. People that never could have been general managers were now welcome into the game. And there was a big fight for acceptance, but they clearly have been accepted. Now every GM would have been radical 20 years ago. Well, those people who were once outsiders themselves are saying, well, maybe there's other outsiders in other areas of the game. If we were able to change the game in this way, who's to say that there aren't pitching coaches or hitting coaches that had untraditional, non-traditional backgrounds that could have a similar effect? And finally, a guy like Craig Wallenbrock, who's in his mid-70s, has been teaching hitting to star players privately and quietly for decades. Guys like Michael Young, Chase Utley, Ryan Braun, Paul Konerko, great hitters, did it behind the scenes, has now finally been accepted into professional baseball. It's a remarkable story.
And you get into the history of it too, in that the early scientists, it's not a secret, and yet it hasn't been fully, I guess, explored, is Ted Williams, right? What was Ted Williams doing that's being done now?
Ted Williams wrote in 1970 in his book, The Science of Hitting, that you've always heard the ideal swing is down or level, what I was taught in Little League, what I'm sure many kids are still being taught in Little League. Ted Williams wrote, that's wrong. And the ideal swing is actually up, and you want to hit the ball in the air. He wrote there was a 10-degree incline on his swing. Don't know how he calculated that, but since Ted Williams said it, I'm just going to believe it's true because that guy was a wizard, a scientist. People didn't really listen, though, for a long time. They said, oh, you're Ted Williams. You have 20/10 vision. You have superhuman athleticism, hand-eye coordination. That won't work. But this guy, Charlie Lau, he knows what's up, teaching this sort of more traditional swing. It took a long time until we had technology where we were able to hook people up to machines and sensors on bats where people go, oh, my God, these great hitters, that is what they're doing. They may say they're swinging down. Guys like Alex Rodriguez might say on TV that he's swinging down on the ball. But now we could see pretty clearly he's actually swinging up. And power is the name of the game today. It's about hitting the ball out of the ballpark, driving the ball for extra bases. It's a much different game than it was 70 years ago or even 50 years ago. And now everything's about get the ball in the air. And the numbers don't lie. Since 2015, the overall batting average, collective batting average on balls in the air, that from infield pop-ups to home runs, is 406. I don't think there's any sort of more telling number than that.
Where does it go? Again, we're kind of going more velocity, more power, more risk reward in the swing. Where do we go? Or does the equipment have to change? Or do we just keep going in this trajectory?
We're going to see this happen for a while, for a few more years, at least, as more teams sort of catch up. Just like in the early days of Moneyball, there's like the early adopters that are having success. I would put Los Angeles and the New York Yankees sort of in that group as teams that really embrace this and have had great success, and others that are still a little more resistant. Well, that's going to change. Eventually, every team's going to be doing this. We're going to see more and more sort of non-traditional people brought into organizations. We're going to see sort of a more top-down approach to player development where you'll have less of what was used to be common, where players would go from single A to double A and their hitting coach would have completely different messages, completely different approaches. That will no longer be the case. It's all going to be sort of solidified, organizational-wide approaches. And then we'll see what happens next. What is the next frontier? The whole history of baseball is this cat and mouse game between pitchers and hitters. And pitchers are always ahead. And every once in a while, hitters kind of catch up a little, and then pitchers jump even further ahead. And that's going to happen again now. The difference is, though, we have technology. Hitters are finally starting to catch up. Pitching was so far ahead technologically of hitting for a long time. That's changed, and eventually pitchers will take another leap forward.
Jared, excellent work. Again, the book is Swing Kings. You can get your baseball fix on that. I love, too, I'll just throw in that going into like the old-time swing wars, I didn't even know, Jared, Ty Cobb hit 5 home runs in 2 games, trying to prove his point like to Babe Ruth and the rest. Even that, like, so this has been going on a long time.
It's an amazing story. Yeah, really quick. Ty Cobb was very upset that Babe Ruth got all this attention being this big. He thought he was just a big brute, and it was not aesthetically pleasing to see the game that way. Well, Ty Cobb allegedly, we don't know if this is true, told a reporter, I'm going to show you that Babe Ruth, anyone could do that, is not so special. Commenced it 5 home runs in the span of 1 doubleheader. That did happen. He did hit 5 home runs in 1 doubleheader. Whether or not he called the shot, we may never know, but it's a great story.
Excellent stuff. Hey, Jared, always a pleasure. We'll see you in person soon, hopefully. Take care of yourself.
I hope
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you.